Hey guys, I'm back with some more Spider-Man reviews, and I'm continuing with Spider-Man 2, which is once again directed by Sam Raimi and brings back the same cast from the first film. In this film, Peter Parker is trying to balance his life as being both Spider-Man and as Peter Parker, and he's dealing with some issues trying to do both of those things at once. But then he finds out about a new villain named Doctor Octopus, played by Alfred Molina, is trying to create a machine that will destroy a lot of things in New York City, and Spider-Man is the only one that has to stop him from doing that. This movie, of course, was highly anticipated after the success of the first Spider-Man film. So many people were excited to see it back in 2004, myself included. And unlike the first film, this is the first Spider-Man film that I did see in theaters back in 2004. And it's honestly an experience that I will never forget because I love this movie so much as a kid. I watched it countless times growing up, and I collected a lot of the toys that were based off of the film, and some of them I still have. I used to wear some t-shirts that were based off of it, and I even used to play the Spider-Man video game back in the original Xbox. And those type of games do often get a bad rap because most movie-based games really do suck. But this one is one of, if not the best one. And I rewatched this movie as an adult to prepare for this review, and I still love it. I still adore Spider-Man 2 as an adult because it's the first Spider-Man film where it gets me emotionally invested in its main characters. When our main characters are growing throughout the film, you start to get more invested in the people under the masks. When you're having moments where you're not going, "Oh, watch out, Spider-Man," you're going, "Oh, watch out, Peter." Like, if you're having moments when you're caring about characters like that, then you know you have great characters in your superhero film. And those are honestly some of my favorite comic book films where you get to care about the characters under the masks. And there are some things in this film that I've grown to appreciate over the years and grown to love even more. Where for me, I started to care more about Peter in this film. I did care about him in the first film when he loses his uncle, but in this film, he deals with some more issues. Like, for one, he's trying to balance being both Spider-Man and Peter Parker, like trying to save as many people in New York City, trying to take pictures for the Daily Bugle, trying to help his aunt get her house back. He's running late for classes in college and not doing the best at math, and trying to reconnect with his two closest friends, Mary Jane and Harry Osborn. And unfortunately, he cannot do all those things at once because whenever he's Spider-Man, he's focusing more on that than trying to be with his friends and family, which leads to some of them thinking that he might not be the great guy for them, but it's mostly because, like, he's keeping his secret identity from them and he doesn't want them to get hurt if they knew. And that still makes Peter feel bad when he's not doing the things that he wants to do. Like, he's feeling bad that he didn't show up in time to MJ's Broadway show, and she's getting married to John Jameson, J. Jonah Jameson's son, so that's gonna be a horrible nightmare for Peter. And he also has to deal with Harry being mad at him all the time, because Harry is mad at him for not telling Harry who Spider-Man is or where he is, because Peter is Spider-Man, and he really doesn't know how to explain it any better. Like, there's this one scene where Harry looks at him and says, "If you knew who he was, would you tell me?" And Peter didn't say anything, because, I mean, how could he? How can you explain a secret identity to a character that claims that you did something bad? Because, spoilers if you haven't seen the first Spider-Man film, and we're gonna get to spoilers here as well. In the end of the first film, Norman tries to kill Peter with his glider, but that ends up having Peter backflip and the glider ends up killing Norman. So when he's seen both Harry and MJ doubt him for being there or helping them, that makes them kind of feel distant from him, where he's starting to slowly lose them and he might not be able to get a chance to get them back. And that does affect him emotionally, especially when it leads to him all of a sudden losing his powers. Because throughout the first half of the film, after he's dealing with those issues, his powers just all of a sudden stop working when he needs them for certain places. Because halfway into the film, he's not shooting any webs out of his wrists, he can't climb on walls, and unfortunately he's losing his sight and needs his glasses now. And once all of a sudden his powers just go goes away, he unfortunately starts to realize that he might not be a superhero anymore. And that's unfortunate because he loves being Spider-Man. And honestly, after seeing Peter give up his life of being Spider-Man after losing his powers, that made me feel bad for him and understand where he's coming from. I didn't understand it as a kid, but as an adult going through certain issues in my life, I do now. Because I've had moments where I doubted myself if something wasn't working out, even though it's something I'm passionate about, and reaching a point where you have to let it go and move on. And that feeling sucks. But of course, after that, you're seeing Peter finally do some more stuff just as Peter Parker, where we get that famous montage scene of him just walking around New York with Raindrops Keep Falling in My Head playing in the background. That of course ends with a cheesy freeze frame. Oh my god. Like, it works for the film, but it makes me laugh every time. But it's one of those moments where it does give the film more charm. But then it gets back to being serious when Peter finally admits to Aunt May that he blames himself for what happened to Uncle Ben because he realizes it was his fault that he died. And then later on, after he visits her again, she forgives him for doing that and thanks her for being brave to finally saying that. And honestly, moments like that where characters are doing that, those are some of the best moments in comic book movies for me, where you're just focusing more on the characters and seeing them grow throughout the film. But there'll be times when Peter is trying to figure out if his powers would come back or not, like one scene when he's trying to jump off of a building to land on another. He thinks that works at first until he starts falling, then lands on a car and breaks his back, which is painful to watch now. Why do I say that? Because Tobey Maguire was doing a stunt for the movie called Seabiscuit, where he's riding on a horse but then injures his back by falling off. So I don't know if this is what they did for this scene or not, or if he was just acting in this scene. But knowing that he broke his back in Seabiscuit and still came back for this film, possibly with a broken back, that's like, oh, that is painful. Also, fun fact, Jake Gyllenhaal was originally gonna replace Tobey Maguire because of his back injury, but Tobey Maguire still wanted to come back for Spider-Man 2. And what's funny about that is that a decade later, Jake Gyllenhaal played Mysterio in Spider-Man Far From Home. Funny how that works, isn't it? And speaking of fun facts, there is a fun one where J. Jonah Jameson is trying to think of a name for Otto Octavius after he gets his mechanical arms. And at one point, this one guy named Hoffman gives him the name Doctor Strange, and then Jameson goes, "That's pretty good, but it's taken." And I find that hilarious now because over 2 decades later, Sam Raimi directed a Doctor Strange movie. They reference the Doctor Strange character in this movie, and at one point, Multiverse of Madness, they reference Spider-Man. That's really funny now that you think about it. And just like in the first film, this movie has some really cool ways of paying homage to the comics, but also being very grounded. Like, you'll get some recreation shots that look like they were ripped out from the comics, like this shot with the spider suit in the trash can, completely taken from a Spider-Man comic. Now, of course, I gotta mention one of the new characters in the film and the main villain of this film, Dr. Otto Octavius, aka Doctor Octopus, or Doc Ock for short, played by Alfred Molina, who, unlike Green Goblin from the first film, he's a more sympathetic villain, where he's doing terrible things, but you understand where he's coming from, where he's trying to build this machine that was supposed to help people with electricity, but when he tests it for the first time, it goes wrong, causing him to lose his career, and unfortunately cause his wife to get murdered. And what makes it worse for him is that the chip that's supposed to help him control the mechanical arms gets fried, and those mechanical arms start controlling him, making him do all these terrible things just so that he can try to make the machine again, where his arms just start controlling him like a puppet. And all of that makes him a great villain, and I would even say that he's on par with Green Goblin from the first film as one of the best villains in a Spider-Man film. And just like in the first film, this has a good way to blend both the campy tone and the more serious tone, where it has some silly moments that's paying homage to the comics, but also having the Raindrops Keep Falling in My Head song. But we'll also have some moments that are very dark and very brutal as well. I mean, not R-rated brutal, but you'll have some moments in this film that are pretty dark. And a good example of that is the hospital scene where Doc Ock's mechanical arms are just killing all these doctors in this one room, which is pretty violent for a Spider-Man movie. And even though there's not a lot of blood in this scene, you still get the feeling that people are getting killed during this scene. And that's something that you don't usually see in today's Spider-Man films because they would just shy away from that. And of course, they would have a lot of great action sequences that stay stuck in your head and are still just as intense and suspenseful as they were in the first film. Like the bank robbery scene between Spider-Man and Doc Ock, which even though it still has some of that dated CGI, it's still a great scene. Also, it's kind of funny seeing Joel McHale in this film way before he was known for things like Community, and Emily Deschanel as well before Bones. And you can tell they are still using real stuff for the action sequences, like still having real stunt doubles and real fights happening. And even with Doc Ock using his mechanical arms as well, while yes, there are moments where you can tell there's CGI, which is surprisingly good CGI for the mechanical arms, but there are also times where you get to see the arms be practical whenever Doc Ock has close-ups. Danny Elfman's score is once again fantastic in this film. There's a lot of great themes in this film. My personal favorite is in the third act when after Peter gets his powers back and takes back his suit from J. Jonah Jameson, confirming that Spider-Man is back, and you get that scene where he's just swinging around New York to get to Doc Ock. That theme in the background is just satisfying, where you feel like, yes, he's coming back, he's gonna save Mary Jane and defeat Doc Ock, which that of course leads to the famous train fight scene. It still has me gripping my hands and getting anxious about what's going on, even though I've already seen this film multiple times, but there's still moments in this film where I get that feeling because of how they shoot it and how they direct it, where it gives you the feeling that anyone in this scene could die. Now yes, Mary Jane Watson is a damsel in distress again, but you kind of go with it this time. It does work for this film and what they're going for. It's annoying, I know, but for this film, you kind of go with it. Let's just hope they don't do that for the third time in the third movie. Oh. And then things start to get a little crazy for Peter after Harry finds out that Peter is Spider-Man after Doc Ock brings his body back to his home. So now their friendship is a little more complicated than before, and Octavius has MJ trapped in his hideout while he's making his machine that goes wrong again. But during this scene, Peter eventually does get Octavius to snap out of it and realize what he's doing is wrong and that the mechanical arms are making him do all of this, which gets Otto to realize what he's doing is terrible, making him finally control the mechanical arms and decides to sacrifice himself by drowning the machine with him. And that leads to MJ finally learning that Peter is Spider-Man, even though part of her did kind of know that he is Spider-Man, which of course causes Peter to let Mary Jane go so that she can get married to John Jameson, because he still realizes that if she's around, she could get hurt now that she knows the truth. But in the end of the film, she decides not to marry John and makes her own decision to be with Peter because she wants to make those same risks with him, which makes Peter happy now that he has MJ in his life and now he's finally gotten things worked out in his life as well. While we have this last shot of MJ waiting for Peter to get home, but also thinking, what did I just do? Spider-Man 2 is everything that made the first film great, but makes it even better by having more stakes happening, making the characters feel more fleshed out where you start to care more about the people under the masks, having great action sequences and a great villain, and of course, another great score from Danny Elfman. And we once again get a cameo from Bruce Campbell. Now I know I have been loving this movie throughout this review and loving everything about it, but there are still some parts in this film that I do think don't really work now. Like, it has some moments that are left unanswered and are never mentioned again. Like, there's this one scene during the bank robbery scene where Aunt May is worried for her life and then all of a sudden Peter leaves her, and that is of course because he's coming back as Spider-Man. But there's never a scene where Aunt May comes to Peter and is like, why did you leave me to get kidnapped by that guy with the robot arms on his back? We never really get an explanation like that. It's just just never mentioned again. Another issue I have is also in the bank robbery scene is just this one brief scene that does look awful. It's a very brief moment, but there's like this one shot when Doc Ock is about to grab Aunt May and she's already being risen up right before the arm grabs her. Like, they couldn't have like a moment when the arm was just going around her and then grabbing her so that it lifts her up? But why would she be lifting up before the arm grabs her? That's like the one small part in this film that I think they probably should have fixed that problem. But other than those issues, and of course I've already mentioned the CGI being a little dated, Spider-Man 2 is still an awesome movie, and it's one of, if not my favorite Spider-Man film. I know most people would say the Spider-Verse films and even No Way Home, and those are great, but honestly, Spider-Man 2 is still my favorite, because that's the one that gets me invested in the characters, and it's the one Spider-Man film that does tear me up at times. I'm gonna give Spider-Man 2 an A. So guys, those are my thoughts on Spider-Man 2. Stay tuned next week for my review for Spider-Man 3. Oh boy. So guys, if you have seen Spider-Man 2, what do you think about it? Do you think it's a great Spider-Man film like I do, or do you think it's overrated and the worst Spider-Man film? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you like this review, then please leave a like and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a thing, because it helps my channel grow. Hit the notification bell so you know what other videos I'm posting. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next one.